and snap too. This song is for Ukraine. Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. Oh. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. They're the ones who coming up, and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the best you can. The world is in their hands. The world won't get no better if you just let it be. Na 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 na. The world won't get no better. Gotta change it now, just you and me. Wake up all the doctors, make the old people well. They're the ones who suffer and get all the help. They don't have so very long for the judgment day, so we won't make them till they pass away. Wake up all the builders, time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we all lend a hand. The only thing we have to do is put it in our minds. Sure, the thing will work out. They do it every time. World won't get no better. Just let it be. Na 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 na. World won't get no better. Yeah. Need a little help now.
Yay, Renee. Thank you, Renee. It was awesome. That was Renee Laboa, Reverend Renee Laboa. And you want to hang with Renee, you get to do that at Unity Village. She'll be there in September, along with a lot of other wonderful people. Just to mention about Renee, I could go on because I've known her for a couple of decades now at least. But Renee is a magnificent musician, and she's also a fabulous minister. She is in the process of reinventing herself, about to take on a new endeavor called Out of the Ashes, a podcast about celebrating mental health, new thought awareness. Anyway, she has a vision, which is one global tribe. Thank you, Renee. Well, welcome everybody to our second keynote of the day. And I just want to introduce myself. I am Reverend Mary Beth Speer, and a proud member of ANTN since 2014. And I've been delighted to be not only on the board, but also on this planning team. And you have seen the magnificent coming together when you just ask people if they will show up. And it has been a phenomenal experience to put on our second annual virtual retreat, which will be an ongoing event. ANTN has a fabulous vision, and it's all about connecting the New Thought community through consciousness and love. And there's just no lid on top of that one. A reminder that this retreat is being done free of charge, completely by donation. Any donations that come through are being split between our practitioners, our musicians, and the wonderful team that we have, which includes the amazing tech team, Robert Brzezinski, Michael Mingus, and of course, Bill Marcioni. I guess we could do a whole standing ovation for you, Bill. You've just been remarkable. It's my favorite thing to do now. I get to introduce one of the most magnificent people I truly have ever known. I don't know what else to say except that we call Dr. Angelo Pizelo the uncommon yes, because no matter what idea we've had for the green growing edge of new thought, you share it with Angie and he says, well, let's figure out a way to make it happen. So I can't think of a better way to get prayed in than our beautiful Dr. Angelo Pizelo. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. We can't hear your beautiful voice.
Thank you, Mary Beth. You have my deep appreciation to have this opportunity to speak to my spiritual family. Join me in prayer. From that top floor of awareness within, that state of consciousness where only joy exists, the cosmic awareness of love, the oneness of all, we open our hearts to this divine presence and its impulse to have each of us experience its magnificence through our speakers today. We are grateful for each of them and their commitment in being the message of love that enhances all of our lives. We know that this is so, and join me in welcoming them and saying, and so it is. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Angie. I love you.
Love you too.
So you've heard today, if you've been on before, this will be a repeat, but a reminder that we have ongoing Thought Leader Thursdays every single month. It's the last Thursday of every month, not the fourth, but the last Thursday of every month. You heard Reverend Dr. P.J. Stanley's singing earlier, her wonderful pipes, but she is a wonderful presider and she brings to us leading edge people in new thought and does a magnificent job, a full hour of interviews. You can Q&A with people. And the other good thing about ANTN's website is their archive. So you can go back and watch some of those wonderful features. It's 12 o'clock Eastern time. It's 11 o'clock here Central time, but you can watch them live or you can watch them after in recordings. Let's see, we also, the hallmark of ANTN is really the community, and we come together for a Love Fest every year, and it is at Unity Village, which is a remarkable place, and I know several people have said that's on their bucket list. Well, take it off your list this year and come on out, because it's going to be phenomenal. Our theme is Love, Learn, Decide, and Do. And the program features inspiring keynotes, exciting workshops, sharing, connecting with new thought friends, all these people that we were hanging out with today. Imagine being with us live and in person. And Unity Village is a remarkable campus. If you have never seen pictures of it, go online and look. Hiking trails, labyrinth, fabulous food. Just you come back so well fed, mind, body, and spirit. And this year we have some amazing speakers. I believe we're going to have a video now where we're going to be introducing one of our speakers, Bayo Akomolafe. And I think, Bill, you're going to put that one on.
And then to the question about what I would say to humanity, I don't know that I would say it to all of humanity because my philosophies resist that kind of capture, resists putting everyone within the same space. If I say the thing I want to say right now to my elders, they probably will slap me upside the head.
Take a chance.
They probably would just sit down. And so my philosophies or the things that I play with, the ideas and concepts that I play with, invite this or compel me and those who are engaged with it to notice an open-ended world, an emerging world, a world that is never so coherent that it can actually be called a world that is still plain and so playful that it resists a single ideology. I find that one particular thing that I say often and often rings true for most people that hear it. So that's what I'll say, reframing the question a little bit, that the times are urgent, let us slow down. The times are urgent, let us slow down. What does that mean? I think in these times of civilizational collapse and chaos and the demise of the systems as we know them, we're being invited to touch the vitality and intelligence of the world we thought we had transcended. And that is the work of coming down to earth. That is the work of becoming humble. That is the work of building new and wild coalitions with the soil, with the more than human. That's what slowing down means to me.
So I hope you'll put that on your list of things to do this year. And when you get off the call or off of our retreat today, you can go ahead and register for our wonderful conference. Well, it's a real honor for me to be introducing our afternoon keynote speaker, Reverend Celeste Frazier, who has been a dear friend of mine since I came here in 2006. We've known each other for quite a while. Reverend Celeste has been a spiritual leader of 3 different centers for spiritual living. She is a podcaster, she is a speaker, she is an author, she is a force of nature. And one of the things I will say about Reverend Celeste that's really exciting is she has stepped away from full pulpit ministry and has expanded into a lot of new dimensions, one of which is a groundbreaking experience that's about to happen in August in Unity Village that Celeste has been a key player in bringing to this organization called Celebrating Our Soul, a New Thought Conference by people of African descent. And it's going to be August 11th through the 14th of 2022. What she's going to be speaking on today is called Pruning Fear and Planting Peace. And I'll just read the last part of it and let her speak to the rest. She says, when we learn the beauty of cohabitation from our flowered, leafy, and swimming cousins, we can anchor the truth of who we are. Diversity is a fact. Equity and inclusion are divine realities. I welcome you. I love you, Celeste. Take it away.
Celeste, you need to unmute.
Thank you, Mary Beth. This is so wonderful to have you presenting me and preceded by a wonderful word and prayer from Dr. Pizelo. I was wanting prayer, so I was grateful that it came from the Master. Yes. All that you touch, you change. When I read that in Octavia Butler's book, The Parable of the Sower, it made me feel wholly responsible for anyone and everything I have touched. And there was a time when I would habitually pull off leaves from a vine or pull off a flower from a stem. And at some point, I came to the realization that I was destroying a life for some frivolous reason or for some moment of temporary satisfaction. And so at one point, I decided to stop doing that. I believe it was because I knew spiritually what Ms. Butler also said. All that you change changes you. Now, we may be unconscious of the ways that we diminish, deny, disable, dismiss other people. We deny them, we dilute them on a moment by moment basis. Right now, we're in the Ramadan vibration. Now, Muslims number about 155 million people, which is 22% of the population of the world. And while we're proud metaphysicians, we are the spiritual progenies of Ernest Holmes, the Fillmores, of Emma Curtis Hopkins, of Emily Cady, of Nona Brooks, and Melinda Kramer, and more, all of whom in some manner recognized at one mint with of the whole of the Creator and creation. So even if we do not identify as Muslims, we know the necessity of prayer, of reflection, and community. And we have enjoyed several moments of prayer. We've also had much to reflect upon. So I'd like to focus on the community aspect of life. Now, many have a limited reference point for the word community. Who is my community, and what does my community have? What does your community look like? So for someone like me who sees both diversity and wholeness, I would like to challenge your thinking around community, or at least give it a mild workout. Is that okay? I have been involved in leading diversity, equity, and inclusion workshops and discussions off and on for over 20 years. What I know is that sometimes we make assumptions about each other that are mistaken. In the book study on caste that I've been facilitating for over a year, Miss Wilkerson talks about how an airline steward assumed that she didn't belong in first class, and he was dismissive and rude. Although she boarded early and had a first class ticket, he had made assumptions based on how she looked. She is a Black woman. Now, when she told him she was in first class because he had assumed otherwise, he had to recover from that faux pas. And he, according to Ms. Wilkerson, had to find a way to retain his caste position. Now, I know this doesn't apply to anyone here except me, but there was a time when I first started ministry that I thought I was superior to my congregants. That was in my first community. While it was true that I had been educated for 7 years in spirituality, they had so much to teach me about compassion and community. We have to cohabitate. So like those who in the movie Don't Look Up tried to convince everyone not to look up while the world was about to go kaput, while maintaining an illusion of having it all together. Doing that means that they abandon the idea of community, regardless of the fact that we are all on the planet together. So imagine traveling for thousands of miles in the sky in a metal container for hours. We are in community when we are on planes. And being in community calls for responsibility. Yet Ms. Wilkerson felt the tension of the flight attendant toward her for the duration of the flight. Now I'm going to categorize that as Newtonian thinking. It's reductive. It focuses on everything in a deterministic way, as if we are reduced to events and see ourselves as the victims of circumstance rather than the authors of our destiny. No wonder we are so phobic. Phobic of someone's sexuality, or phobic of their change in gender, or phobic of their race, phobic of their economic class. So much phobia. When we forget that we are at a point of choice, we need to remember what Florence Scovel Shinn said. Man, woman, non-binary, should watch themselves hourly to detect if their motive for action is fear or faith. Choose ye this day whom we shall serve, fear or faith. Right? A little variation from the scripture. Other beings do not have those issues. There are mutualistic relationships in the world all over the place. And those relationships exist between, for example, plowers and Egyptian crocodiles. Plowers are birds. They're relatively puny, wading birds that boldly perch at the opening of a crocodile's mouth, and they pick food from their razor-sharp teeth. Yes, really. Even more surprising is that the crocodiles allow the birds to forage for scraps in their mouths because it keeps their teeth clean and happy and healthy. Now, after all, a crocodile's teeth are its most useful quality. Now, going back to humans, on another flight, Miss Wilkerson was again in first class. She and the flight attendant were looking for a space to put her carry-on bag overhead. And a Caucasian man of the dominant caste had 2 carry-ons above, and each bag she or the flight attendant touched, someone would say, "You can't touch that, that's my bag." So finally she said to the man behind her seat with 2 carry-ons, "May I put your bag under my seat so it wouldn't take up much space in front of him, just so she could get her bag stored and the plane could take flight?" He said, "I put my bag where I wanted it. I don't want it under another seat." And then he took the bag from the flight attendant and shoved it under his seat. And he started complaining to the man in the window seat. "That's what happens when they just let anybody in first class. They should know better how to treat paying customers. I paid for my first class ticket and this is how they treat you." And on and on. So the men were commiserating for the long flight, a night flight. So she was trying to get some rest. And, she moved her seat back, like we do when we want to rest, right? He's like, "What do you think you're doing? I'm trying to work here. Look what you've done. I've got my laptop out and you shoved it into me." And he slams the back of her seat and pounds the tray forward, right? Then the men just continue to talk about the intrusions into first class, and there was venom in the air, okay? And Miss Wilkerson got up to ask the flight attendant to see if she could help. "I'm desperately tired and I need to sleep," she said. "And the man behind me is shoving my seat." And the flight attendant offered her to stand in the front. And Miss Wilkerson refused, and the flight attendant said, "It's up to you. You can stay up here or go back." Talk about being stuck between a rock and a hard place. She went back and sat up straight across the length of the country. On the other hand, cattle egrets live on insects. And in the savannah, insects happen to congregate on the ubiquitous water buffalo. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, you'll find these birds constantly perched atop buffalo backs. And they scoop up the insects that the buffalo kicks up from the grass, and they earn free rides by picking up harmful fleas and ticks off their hosts. See how that works when you cohabitate? And I don't know why they presume that we are superior beings when these so-called lesser beings are doing these cohabitations and learning how to live in unity with each other and being mutually beneficial to each other. These cattle egrets also have a heightened sense of danger, so they're able to alert the water buffalo if danger is near. How about we do that for each other? In 2013, on a flight to Atlanta, white passengers slapped a black baby in the face because the baby was crying due to the change in altitude upon descent. I don't know about you, but slapping a baby to me is like beyond the pale, as they say. It's like, who is more innocent and helpless? And then juxtaposition that with pistol shrimp, who are fierce predators that can snap their claws together so tightly that a jet of water shoots out. So why would gobies be willing to go near them? Well, for as good as they are at catching prey, the shrimp are also very vulnerable to predators themselves because of their bad eyesight. Gobies, it turns out, have great eyesight. They act as seeing fish for the shrimp, keeping their tail fins in contact with the shrimp's antennae to easily signal when danger is near. In return, the gobies get free access to the pistol shrimp's burrows so that they can hide from their predators, right? How about that for somebody having your six? Go back to humans. In 2017, a Vietnamese American passenger was dragged off a United Airlines plane in Chicago, suffering injuries to his head and knocking out some of his teeth. The airline had overbooked the flight and no passenger took the airline's offers of compensation in exchange for giving up their seats. And they chose 4 passengers at random. And David Dow, a physician, needed to get back to his clients and did not want to give up his seat. The airline called security to remove him. And he was dragged by his legs in front of all of the passengers on the plane who were stunned. So Mr. Dow was convinced that his ethnicity was a factor. The ordeal, he said, was more horrifying than when he fled Vietnam. Even 3 years after that incident, he was watching it on the news crying. Now, some people may want to do a spiritual bypass and say with Myrtle Fillmore, there are no discords in my being. Being is peace. And it is true. But this was among the disturbing chapters in the book Cast. And it was painful for many people of color, like it was for Mr. Dow, to read this book. And it continues to be. We're still moving through the last part of it. Because we can't just simply say, well, that's post-traumatic stress syndrome, and that's very real for many people of color. And while we do our work in consciousness, that doesn't really require the people who are harmful to us to be relinquished from doing their spiritual work. At least I don't think so. So we need to learn from our cousins in the animal kingdom how we can support each other and not slip into defensiveness and attack. Ernest Holmes says that the mind which condemns understands not the truth of being, and the heart which would shut the door of its bosom to one who is mistaken strangles its own life, closing its eyes to a greater vision. The biggest life is the one that includes the most. Ernest Holmes is a pretty smart guy. Octavia Butler says in the parable of the sower, the only lasting truth is change. God is change. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the fable of roasted pigs or not. They say is the origin of the roast meat, right? So get this, there was a fire in the forest where there were some pigs which were roasted by fire. And the men who were there, who were accustomed to eating raw meat, tried and found the roasted meat delicious. Well, from there, every time they wanted to roast pork, they burned down a forest. Over time, problems began. Sometimes the animals were too burned, or sometimes they were partially raw. But millions were fed on roast beef and millions who were engaged in the task of roasting them. Therefore, the system simply couldn't fail. However, curiously, the more the process scale grew, the more it seemed to fail and the greater the losses caused. There were complaints. There was clamor to reform the system. Congresses, seminars, conferences began to be held annually to seek a solution. So the following year, they repeated the congresses, the seminars, the conferences. And so they attributed the system failure to the indiscipline of pigs. Whatever, right? They didn't remain where they should be, or the inconsistency of the fire, so difficult to control. Well, yeah, it's fire. Or to the trees who didn't burn as fast as they should, or the soil was too humid, or the meteorological information service wasn't accurate. You know, they were coming up with all of these reasons why it wasn't working. There wasn't enough rain and so on. So by this time, though, the roasting of the pigs was already complex. There was diversified machinery. There were individuals dedicated to lighting the fire, arsonists who were also specialized to do it, some in the morning, some in the afternoon, some were specialized for summer, some were specialized for winter. There were wind experts that proliferated. They're called anemotechnics. So there was a roasting and roast feeding general director and the igneous techniques director. And he has his whole advisors general council, a reforestation general assistant, a national commission for professional training in pigology, a higher institute of culture and food techniques, and the advisory bureau of igneous operative reforms. Can you imagine? So there were millions of people working on woods preparation, which would soon be burned down. And so foreign experts studied the import of the best tree seeds, the more potent fire, and the large facilities kept the pigs confined before the fire, and there were mechanisms to let them out into the woods only at the right time. And researchers prepared teachers in the construction of pig facilities, and foundations supported researchers working for universities that prepared the professors who specialized in the construction of pig facilities. So all of the solutions were suggesting that they would apply the fire after it reached a certain wind speed, and then release the pigs 15 minutes before the average forest fire reached 115 degrees. And then they would put giant fans in the opposite direction to the wind in order to direct the fire. I mean, it was crazy. So one day, a forest lighter specializing in Southwest daytime warning with a bachelor's degree in rainy summer called John decided to say that the problem was very easy to solve, because according to him, it was enough first to kill the chosen pig, cleaning and cutting properly the animal, and then placing it on a metal grill over hot coals until the heat effect, and not the flames, roasted the flesh. Oh, the director general of roasting heard about this and called John to his office, and he said, well, this won't work in practice. It's wasteful. And John's like, really? Well, what's going to happen to the specialists in weeds? What's going to happen to the specialists in timber? What's going to happen to the builders of the 7-story pig pens? And they have the cleaning machines, they have the automatic centers. You know, you don't have any realistic solutions to fix this problem. And you know what the problem is, so don't go around telling everybody that you can fix it. And so John is just sitting there like, he doesn't even know what to say. He just gets up, half scared, half stunned, and sneaks out, and nobody ever sees him again. Right? So this fable illustrates how difficult it is to change a system that has been pre-established and functioning for a long time. However innovative the idea might be, people don't want to change the system. So if you try to radically change anything in your life, particularly if it's attached to an organization or a system, then you already know how that works. The United States is 245 years old, 9 months and 18 days old. The Supreme Court was established 232 years ago on January 1st, 1789. But just this month, the first Black female was confirmed to the Supreme Court. So it takes that long for systems to acquiesce to something new, something different, right? So if there's an economic sector that's the foundation of an economy, or with global technology, it's the fable of the pigs all over again. We cannot continue to maintain old systems because we're afraid to change. People like Peter and Eileen Caddy learned to listen to the agriculture rather than to dominate. And they produced a magnificent life-sustaining garden at Findhorn in Scotland. We are quantum beings. We have the vibration of the Most High within us. So my energy is proportional in magnitude to the frequency of that which is within me. I am more than a mere mortal. I get to be a conduit of divine love. We can remember the concept of oneness is not ethereal or a simple theory. It has to be put in action. And in order to do so, we must be rooted in love. Now, I invite us to continue to cultivate love for ourselves so that we can relinquish the need to dominate. I invite us to know the depths of our wealth so that we do not do what Russia is doing to Ukraine and conquering it. And in the vibration of love, we do not seek to reign over one another, but to see the face of God that Karen Drucker sings about. I would like to finish with my poem entitled Peace. It's in my book called In Spirit and Love. Oh, mercy, mercy me. Forgiving can be hard to be. And yet I know there's none outside of me. Mother, Father, God, love them through me, please, for I cannot do so with ease. Beloved Spirit, I rest in thee. I seek answers to set me free. And I know truth can be found when I listen in quiet without a sound. Return within to be in peace and allow all thoughts to cease. Please join me in prayer. Infinite Spirit, how glorious and expansive, how wise and orderly thou art. And so to know that it gives all of itself to all of creation and that we are amply equipped with all of the goodness. And so I accept for us that we release any fear of not having enough, needing to puff ourselves up, needing to edge someone else out because we can't allow ourselves to let more God come through us, move through us, ooze out of us, giving it generously, abundantly. May we see the brilliance and the magnificence of the tiniest of animals, the shrimp in the sea, the birds, and all of the wonderful expressions of life that have shown us, even some high-level humans, when we listen to nature, when we allow ourselves to be conduits to each other to flourish. How wonderful it is to have this time together to staple ourselves in principle in a way that is authentic, in a way that is powerful for our growth and unfoldment. I give thanks for it all, for each speaker, for each musician, for each attendee, for knowing that we're growing together in consciousness, blessing this universe and the whole system that we live and move and have our beingness in. And so with an abundance of gratitude, I lovingly release this word to the heart of God as the mind of God acts upon it. And so it is. Amen. Ashe. Aho.
Oh. Thank you, Reverend Celeste. We have a little time for Q&A.
Okay.
And one of the things I'll start off, I'd like to ask you, thank you, that was phenomenal. What a perfect talk for Earth Day 2022.
Well, I tried to tie everything in. I tried to be efficient.
You did very well. I don't think we missed an animal there.
We got Ramadan in there too, so you know.
There it is. So you have got this amazing thing that you have been co-creating, the groundbreaking event that's happening at Unity Village in August. Would you speak to that, please?
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Wow. It was an interesting journey with New Thought. We don't see as many people of color in New Thought, but we're out there. We're everywhere, and we're finding that people have been praying for this for years, for this to happen. We didn't know. We just said yes to having a retreat. It began with the Unity ministers who were seeking to do retreats like they'd done in the past. And my prayer partner, who I believe is here today, Reverend Edith, said, well, we want to invite CSL into that. And so I got the word out to CSL people, and then we kept opening it up to more and more New Thought people, and more people were excited about it. And we've been able to bring in some wonderful people. Dr. James Trapp, I'm a keynote, Reverend Derek Wells of Christ Universal Temple, who was in the space where Johnny Coleman was. We have Bishop Yvette Flunder, who's a magnificent presence and consciousness. We're having 12 different workshops with everything from storytelling to prosperity to Egyptology to African spirituality. There's just an abundance of ways that people are being supported. We have like a medical doctor. We have just some wonderful assets to support people. And we are putting this on. We're people of African descent, but everybody is welcome. It's not for people of African descent exclusively. It's for everybody. But by being the producers of this event, we're getting to feed ourselves in the way that we need to be fed. We're going to have some soul food in there on Saturday night. So, you know, there's going to be some wonderful, wonderful presenters, you know, Michael Beckwith, Sylvia Sumter. We're going to have a little excursion into Kansas City around some Black history, landmarks and events that are there. We have all kinds of African-American history that's in that region. We got a DJ, we're going to be bumping it, okay? And we got some local talent coming in, like an African dance troupe and the Wild Women of Kansas City. I don't want to have to describe who they are to you. You just have to experience it for yourself. But there are some wonderful presenters that are from all different aspects of New Thought. The official sponsors are Unity World Headquarters and Centers for Spiritual Living. We have event sponsors like the Urban Ministerial School, East Bay Church of Religious Science, International New Thought Alliance. We have, gosh, so many program sponsors. We have the Meditative Life Ministries. We have Hillside Church, which is an independent church. You know, we've got a number of different sponsorships. ANTN came in and they brought some money to the table. We've got, you know, people that are the founders of this. There's about 12 of us. And so, you know, we've invested in the conference as well. And so we're just inviting everybody to participate so that everybody can be part of the commemorative journal, because this has never happened before. It's been a long time coming. And so it is a historical and a very contemporary and necessary event. I hope y'all will come check out our website at www.padntg.org. It's a wonderful, mighty network community that we have where we're getting to know each other and the excitement is building. Early registration ends on April 30th. So don't wait if you want to save money.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, and there's a youth program too. I'm sorry.
Hey. I'm so glad, you know, that's one of the things that came up today with Jeff, and a couple of comments that came through about how grateful people are in this conference, in this retreat, to be seeing young people. And I'm hoping we see more young faces. So does anyone have anything they'd like to speak to or questions for Reverend Celeste? Thanks, Edith, for putting that in the chat. We've got the website addresses in the chat. Any comments or questions? Okay. Any comments or questions? Oh, go ahead, Reverend Michelle.
Yes, and I'm not sure how to raise my hand officially, but anyway, here, you just saw me. So Celeste, I want to thank you for your words of wisdom and grace and beauty. And you made such a powerful juxtapositioning of the natural world and the symbiotic relationships, and then how we treat each other. That was just really profound, powerful, and moving. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I found it to be so too, because we're supposed to be the ones who know better, right?
Betty has her hand up.
Eddie.
Okay, thank you. And I had said earlier today, the one thing I liked about CSL, New Thought, I'm sorry, was the principle of diversity and harmony. And you did an excellent job of reaching in another avenue of looking at nature and animals. Of course, you talked about human diversity too, but you're starting, and I haven't experienced New Thought starting with the animal world or the other animal world and bringing it with the so-called dominant animal world. And so that does, that articulates another concept for me of a universal principle of diversity in harmony. And I mean diversity in harmony. And how do we?
Yeah, they're our cousins.
Yes. And how we achieve it. The concepts are cousins, but our behavior, of course, is what we have to focus.
Right. And that tells us a lot about our mindset. If our purpose is to use another being for our temporary pleasure, or are we willing to cohabitate in a way that honors each other, where we can actually take care of each other?
Yeah.
When you see one being taking insects off of another being helping another being to be out of harm's way because of the camouflage of their structure of their being, we're set up for success. We don't have anything to be afraid of, right? But we act as though we don't know the presence of God is within us, just like it's within everything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, do you want to speak to the INTA event that's happening here in Chicago?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. The International New Thought Alliance is having the 107th World Congress in Chicago this July. It's not the 107th annual because in World War II they skipped a couple, but it's the sort of organization where you get to go back and, there was a blip in the 40s. It's the 107th annual Congress, and what we're talking about is the past, the passion, and the potential of New Thought. And the idea that we had in the Congress committee was to bring together all of New Thought, because we sometimes get the idea that we're different, that we're separate, that there's Unity is over here doing their thing, and CSL is over there doing their thing, and Divine Science has something that's completely different, and United Foundation for Better Living is something else, and Independent New Thought is like the glue or separate or something. And there's this notion of separation, that there's a difference, and there's definitely differences between the organizations, the approaches, the books that the founders of each of them wrote. Once somebody learns about one branch of New Thought, and then they learn about another branch of New Thought, you suddenly say, oh, these are almost exactly the same. There is so much that we have in common, and there is so much that makes us different than the other faith traditions and religions of the world. I mean, everything else is way over there, and we're all together over here. So what the committee did was we invited the senior leadership of all of the New Thought organizations: Centers for Spiritual Living, Unity, Agape, the Association for Global New Thought, the Affiliated New Thought Network, INTA is sponsoring this, Universal Foundation for Better Living, Divine Science, all of them. I think there are 10 or 12 leaders getting together in a panel discussion to kick off the Congress, to talk about what we have in common and to illustrate the things that we're passionate about, that we're working on now, so that we can cross-pollinate and share with each other. And it is going to be a tremendous week in Chicago in July. newthoughtevents.org is where you can register for that now. Registration is already open. It promises to be really powerful. And the side effects have already started happening, because a lot of the leaders in these organizations have wanted to get together and do something in the past, and it's gone a little bit, and then it's fallen apart, and it's gone a little, and it's fallen apart. But turns out that the following summer, in August of 2023, the Parliament of World Religions is coming to Chicago. And New Thought is going to once again have a presence, but we're going to have one presence where all of these organizations, the leadership has already gotten together to do a single New Thought presence that represents all of us, so that we can show off who we are and what we're all about. So this is the way that we're recombining and supporting and our commonality in illustrating the differences. The Congress is at Christ Universal Temple, which is in Chicago, and it promises to be a fabulous event.
It's so exciting. I still remember years ago when Dr. Kathy Hearn was CSL's president at the time. And I remember her going to the parliament. She said, it's like New Thought's in the room, but we're not at the table yet. So it sounds to me like we're at the table.
I think we're setting the table this year, yeah.
Yeah, and what you shared with me, Bill, is that at the INTA conference, it isn't these leaders coming in, doing a keynote and leaving. They're going to hang out together all week, right? Including Anton. Jerry's going to be there.
Yep.
But all of them together, being there together for a week, as opposed to presenting unity and then leaving, presenting
Right.
INT or divine science.
Yeah, I think there are 6 or 9 of the workshops and keynotes and panel discussions that are happening after that opening roundtable discussion are being done by the leaders of the different New Thought organizations. And just getting into the room with this high degree of consciousness is it's a thrill.
And
if they're sticking around, you can have lunch with them or see them later for a cocktail or something.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of elbow rubbing that goes on at the International New Thought Alliance Congress.
Great. Iris,
Fancy that. New Thought being in oneness.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Reverend Iris, what would you like to say?
I want to speak to Celeste's talk. You know, I tell you, Reverend Celeste, and I see your posts on the CSL ministers list, and I always love reading them. I think this talk ought to be broadcast on national television because there's so much to that talk that I can't even pick out a dozen things. There were so many things.